A little panel discussion here while you all enjoy lunch. And the theme of it is really around what customers are doing as it relates to modern work today. So these are real customer case studies. We've anonymized them because, as some of you may know, customers don't always want their names to be known or don't have permission to do so. So we're going to say things like an engineering company or a marketing company or things like that. Those are real customers, but we're not using their names throughout our talk here today. So AVI Systems is composed of a series of technology practices. And joining me here today are leaders from these practice areas. Jason Roberts leads our enterprise AV and visualization practice. So he's going to kick us off today. Jason, why don't you go ahead and give us an idea kind of who you are and how you came to find this industry.
Thanks, Keith. Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Roberts. So happy to be here today. I'm excited for you all to be able to participate in this conversation with us. I have the privilege of leading a team of enterprise architects who really work with organizations like yourself, create strategies and business development around modern work outcomes that your organizations are trying to strive for. I started my career about 35 years ago in the IT industry, and I started with IBM. And when I was at IBM, it really kind of set the foundation for IT and services, and it gave me a structure around outcomes-based mindset and thinking. And right now, with the team that I lead, I get the opportunity with that team to really focus on modern strategies around technology development that really help curate outcomes that your enterprise is looking for.
All right, thank you, Jay. So
Thanks.
there's really two fundamentals, I would say, when it relates to modern work. People need places to do heads down work, and then they need mechanisms to collaborate. So our first case study is an manufacturing company?
Yep.
Manufacturing company. Okay, can't use the name. Okay. They were relocating their headquarters, and they wanted to achieve a couple of outcomes, one of which, besides updating their technology, was change the culture of the organization. So Jason, why don't you give us an idea about what this was?
Yeah, just to frame it up a little bit, the organization was reimagining distributed work. And through the pandemic, they had the opportunity to say that we need to right-size the organization. They had a legacy building that was very large, and they knew that distributed work was working for their organization. And they wanted to reimagine what a new technology ecosystem could really look like for them. So what they did is they said to themselves, let's right-size our organization, let's make it a little bit smaller from a footprint standpoint, but let's really bring value to what we want to do with our distributed workforce. And let's bring value for those that come in the office and want to work together. So it was really a mindset shift that helped the organization, and it was really a top-down mindset, which was really refreshing. Oftentimes, there is a workforce that's trying to drive new technologies, and we're trying to build new collaboration spaces because we think just doing something new is important. They really allowed themselves to say, it's more than just the technology, it's about our people, it's about our culture and what we want to do. And so it gave them the opportunity to kind of reset the whole stage.
Yeah, so Jason Molden. Jason leads our Microsoft practice. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself and your practice?
Sure, thanks, Keith. Happy to be here. Thanks for taking some time to listen to us today. My name is Jason Molden. I'm the Managing Director for Magenium Solutions. So we are a division within AVI Systems, and our core focus is on Microsoft services. So many of the items that Jason and Keith just mentioned, rooms, enablement, spaces, things like that, it starts with a core foundation that your Microsoft core and your infrastructure has to be intact and able to allow or enable those experiences. So that's why I'm here today as part of the panel.
Yeah, and that's kind of where my next line of questioning was headed was, this customer standardized on teams for the many reasons a lot of customers do, ease of use, reliability, security, and so on. But I would say maybe no two teams environments perhaps are the same. There's elements of a healthy teams environment that leads to reliability and performance and so on. Maybe give us an idea of what are some of the things you see in a healthy versus unhealthy environment.
The common conversation that we have with customers is twofold. In order to have a healthy teams environment, you end up with an executed set of decisions that the customer has made in terms of what their needs are, what they have. The second part is making sure that at a technical level, that infrastructure is accurate and functional and meets your requirements. So we take customers through both exercises. The first one, if you think about the last few years, a lot of our partners have effectively aggregated a number of different services. We deal with a lot of customers that haven't yet established. They have a Teams environment, but I also use Dropbox, or I use Slack, or things like that. So our first conversation with our customers is to help them figure out what their trajectory is and which services they want to have. Even now, here we are effectively almost 4 years later, we're still working with customers on a day-to-day basis that have not yet sorted what type of service they're going to lean on or knowing the nuances. So once we have that established, then we can work the customer, to your point, Keith, about the different nuances they have in their environment, what works, what doesn't work. Our core principle is to make sure that our customers have the most quick access to Microsoft. There's a concept of Microsoft front doors, so we want to make sure that the customer doesn't have anything else in the way. Then beyond that, we start to get into policy. We're spending a lot of times looking at does the organization's governance or compliance requirements meet, and what do we need to change to make them compliant in that case? And we work across that spectrum in detail.
Yeah. So what he's kind of touching on are things that I kind of refer to as Teams gremlins, perhaps. Anybody ever been on a Teams call where it just does some weird things? You get some latency, you get some dropouts. Some of that could be caused by some of these back-end things we maybe tend not to think about. So shifting over to Jason Roberts, you touched on this, I think, a little bit earlier, but as part of this move for this customer, they were looking to change culture. Did that happen? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was. They really did a fantastic job because they took the approach of, let's create spaces and collaboration spaces that are very unique and different. And that was a really top-of-mind type of mindset. They allowed themselves to create spaces that had different furniture in them, right? They had spaces where people could stand up and work together. And they created these different spaces, and then part of the culture was they had a great culture. And again, this really came from the top down, but what was really interesting is I think the culture matured over time. And what I mean by that is, in spending time with Pete and learning a little bit more about the organization, he talked about how they did something as simple as we created a cafe space that was for everyone. And we created a high-impact space that was for everyone. And they have a barista. And they talked about how typically, in the past, the executive or the leadership team was on a different floor. But by bringing that together and creating a new space, there were multiple groups that got to see each other. And one of the best messages was, I got a chance to stand in line with my CFO and just have a conversation about the weekend, have a conversation about what's coming. And just those bespoke kind of conversations that happen, those organic conversations, I think people feel in touch and empowered with what the organization is doing. And it might seem that technology didn't have a play, but it actually did, because the idea was, let's create a space that has technology in it, but we can all use for multiple purposes and for multiple outcomes. And some of those outcomes are just spending time with people. Because as some of the top priorities they looked at was, how do we have access to people? How do we create spaces that are fresh and bring in some of that nature and aspect like we had at home? How do we create spaces that really create an outcome for what we're looking for? And how do I get some of that good from home that we've been doing and bring that into the office? And by creating different spaces, that culture really started to get involved in those conversations, and I think just really grew a lot.
We didn't do the coffee maker, did we?
We did not do the coffee maker. They have a barista that's there full time that makes some of the most fantastic coffee. It is exquisite. It's a joy.
So Rob,
Yes.
Rob Watley. Rob leads our UC practice. Give us a little introduction, some background into your practice, please.
Well, I'm Rob Watley. I've been in the industry, 30 plus years as well. I came from the telepresence world way back in the day. And most of you guys know me, and ladies know me, because I was the bouncer, obviously, in the vault today. So, but my
Got your steps
position here at the, what's that?
You got your steps in.
Got my steps in for sure, right?
Yeah.
My position here, though, is to focus on all of the UC technologies, not just Microsoft. Now, obviously, Microsoft has taken over the world for the most part, right? But I need to also focus on Zoom and Cisco and also Google as well. So that's my role here, is to make sure that we take care of all of our customers on all the different platforms, because you know, as we all know, that most of you have more than one platform, right? So we need to make sure that we are there to take care of you.
Yeah, so we're going to shift gears. We're going to go over now to a case study around an engineering company. And this company was something that was actually, we uncovered a requirement that was a bit surprising to me, but makes complete sense when you think about it. We were in a quarterly business review of the customer looking at some things that we wanted to accomplish in the future together, and we uncovered a requirement that shifted us over to a Zoom solution. So Rob, why don't you give us an idea of what that was?
So absolutely, engineering company. The outcome they wanted was around SMS text messaging and having the ability to actually track it. So in the past year, this company went to Zoom. They had a bake-off with Microsoft, and you guys finally lost.
Thanks.
For one time.
Thanks, Rob.
Which is pretty interesting, right? So they had a bake-off with Microsoft, and Zoom actually won. So to your point about the QBR, so it's a long-standing customer of ours for about 10 years. So we go into the QBR, we understand this need for SMS text messaging. And you say, Rob, why would a company need to have SMS text messaging? Right? Well, first of all, we all use text messaging all the time. As a matter of fact, I get ticked off when somebody calls me and doesn't text me first to let me know that they're calling me, right? It happens to all of us. But in this particular case, you know, if you think about it, a company needs that. If they're billing and you're texting, you need a way to track that, right? So you can't track billing. I mean, you can't, if you text and you are billing, how do you track that? So they need the ability to do that. And it's also the fact that if people leave the company, you know, how do you get that information back if you don't record it? There's also the legal accountability, you know, as well when it comes to this. So with SMS text messaging, it's automatically archived, so you can actually go back and see what's going on there in the past. So what happens through a QBR, we found this out. But at the same time, we realized that they were going through a potential, they had Mitel as a on-prem PBX. So the Zoom solution here was actually Zoom Phone or Zoom Voice that takes care of this SMS requirement. So we found that at the same time, for the most part, that this Mitel thing was going on. Sorry, my phone's ringing. This Mitel thing was going on. At the same time, we needed to upgrade to something that gives SMS text messaging. So guess what? Zoom does all of that. So this company went somewhere else looking for a different solution from another voice company. We decided to say, listen, all your requirements fit into this one basket with Zoom. So why not go this way? And that's the way they went. So now they have SMS text messaging. Their entire environment is Zoom from a meetings and a Zoom room perspective. And now they have Zoom Voice, and that requirement has been taken care of.
Yeah, it's a great story. So this is an example, Jason Molden. There's two Jasons, so I got to say last names so we keep each other straight. Where Zoom kind of won out, if you will, based on an outcome the customer was going after. But Teams, and specifically Teams Voice, there's a lot of innovation going on there. Give us an idea of what's going on.
Sure. I want to take a moment first, and now I know why Rob doesn't take my calls, because I'm not SMSing ahead of time. We'll take care of that in the future and fix that. I think the one thing we need to look at with voice, and you actually just said it, Rob, and I want to draw the point back. Voice versus phone. We're going through a renaissance on both platforms, or multiple platforms, in terms of what we're doing with voice. I think that if you were to go a few years ago, someone said, do I need a phone? We might think of that differently. Do we need a desk phone? But what's happening on the Microsoft side is we're seeing a reinvestment or almost a renaissance back into features revolving around voice. So if I gave you some examples, we have users that leverage Microsoft Voice as their platform. So we can all make one-to-one calls in Teams with or without video. Mm-hmm. But the ability to integrate with various services, Direct Connect, if they have their existing phone, Microsoft offers calling plans, we have Operator Connect, there's a wealth of opportunities. But what we're seeing is we're seeing technical innovation on a technology that, for the most part, I mean, phone is phone if you think about it that way. if I gave you some recent examples, within Microsoft, we're now identifying voice prints. So some of you in Teams may have already done this, where you enroll your voice, and that provides a couple things. For transcript purposes, it's very important. If we think about the legal ramifications, Rob, of what you just said, if I'm in a conference room and I'm the individual speaking, I want those comments attributed to me directly.
Correct.
There is a risk, if we're going through transcription and recording, that there are 5 people in a room, someone makes a statement, positive or negative. We don't know who made that statement in the long term. I can't go back and look. So by reaching into these new technologies around voice, we're able then to get better detail. I can see meeting recaps. One of the things you might also see if you're a Teams user is if you're leveraging meeting recap, you'll actually see a timetable, and it will tell you who was speaking and at what point during the meeting they spoke. So again, we can provide mechanisms to allow for calling and other purposes, but we're seeing this build on. I mean, I will tell you selfishly that when I see meeting recaps, I'm typically looking for 1 or 2 people in the meeting. It might be my superior. It might be a particular person on my team. I'm cheating, if you will, and I'm immediately going to the point where I see what that person said and listening to their comments first, and then I might synthesize the rest of the meeting in the meeting notes or otherwise. But it's certainly a technology that, even though we thought there was nothing else to add with voice, we're now seeing a resurgence of interest, but also innovation that's happening around voice as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so the takeaway there for me is, voice is not dead, far from it. Who here still has a home phone? Anybody?
There's a couple of them.
I just had one put in the last couple of years on purpose, and it's for my kids. So I mounted it to the wall, got a really long cord, and the only people that have the numbers are the grandparents. So on my side and my wife's side. And it's there for them to have conversations with grandma and grandpa. And we made them memorize the numbers too, so there's no speed dial on this thing either. It's old school handset, memorize grandma and mom and dad's numbers obviously too. But they have to answer it, Yandell residents, I make them do it all the right way, the way we did when we were kids, right? And give them that experience that not everything has a screen, was my goal with that. So I have a home phone, and I say that, again, voice is not dead. The technologies now might be a soft client with a headset and so on. But Rob, give us an idea what this customer is leveraging in terms of technologies, maybe endpoint technologies pairing with this Zoom phone system.
Well, it's interesting you say about the cord, right? I remember back in the days I used to follow the cord into the bathroom, right? Your grandparents were there doing their thing, right? So pretty interesting that how things have changed. But it's interesting, as I quick tell a story, back in the day we just had cell phones. Now we have smartphones. So things have elevated from that phone to something that we utilize for other things. As a matter of fact, we don't use the cell phones most of the time for calls.
Well, clearly you don't. Let's start
Exactly
with you,
right.
Rob.
Exactly right. But think about the industries out there that still use just the phone, right? I can't go to a hotel room, right, that doesn't have a phone in it. I can't basically go to a hospital that, doesn't have a phone in it. Government agencies, phone. Look at the TSA agents in airports. They also have phones too. But this particular customer is interesting. They're just old school, right? They just are old school. This particular customer, when the pandemic happened, they didn't go home to work. They stayed in their offices to actually work. So, but back to the earlier point, the phones have actually changed. Now, they have the screens on them, right? You can do video, if you will. They are wireless technology. They can pair with your cell phone now. And a lot of these phones now have no cord, so you're not limited to sitting at your desk. You can just walk around with the handset in your head. And you can also just plug in a headset, if you like, as well. So there's a lot of utility to these phones these days.
So Craig Frankenstein, thank you for hanging in with us. We were going to get to him.
I'm back.
He has the funnest job of all. So he said, he can wait a little bit before we get to him. Craig leads our digital media and broadcast practice. Craig, give us a little introduction, a little background.
Sure, thanks, Keith. I am fortunate enough to lead a group of solution architects around broadcast digital media technology. And for us, that's the cool stuff. We're passionate about it. We've got decades of experience helping organizations communicate around those large one-to-many applications. It's a small portion of the meetings that happen inside of a business, but they're typically very high profile, high priority. We're talking about getting the CEO on camera and allowing him to look on point and on brand. It's our job to engage and embrace that technology, helping organizations communicate better for those meetings.
Yeah, so we've got another example. New customer example. Are they manufacturers? I mean, cardboard boxes, right? So I would call that manufacturing. However, they invested in this technology and they kind of stepped into it over time. And as they realized the power of the technology, it really kind of blossomed within the organization. So maybe give us an example of what they did.
Sure.
And,
so the solution that they came to us with was, or the problem, I should say, that we solved for them. When the pandemic happened, they realized they still had to message who they are, what they were, and what their company was to the general public. They couldn't get the CEO to look good on a codec sitting in his room with bad lighting and bad audio. So the challenge to ABI was, how are we going to get our CEO on camera when we don't have a facility, we don't have a place to do this? So we utilized traditional production technology. We built a small corporate environment for them, and the goal was allow him to create that message that looked like he could be on television with any other television studio or station that they were trying to communicate with. And that was the goal. What if I want to be on CNBC? What if I want to be on Bloomberg? What if I want to take the message around what our company is doing and get on these stations? Because he had the context to do that. And it started about 3 years ago. And the goal was get him on television and make him look as good as the studio he was in. So the first phase was 3 cameras, lighting, and create a space that was comfortable, reliable, and predictable. It worked so well that within less than 6 months, they said, we want to use this even more. There's other business line leaders in our organization that we want to be able to bring in and create this messaging. So we were adding lighting and cameras. We were getting them better audio support so that when they were talking to another studio in New York, they could hear in their ear, and it was a very easy conversation for them. Phase 3 is actually happening right now, where again, they're finding more business line leaders in there that want to utilize this space, because even though it might be 1% of the meetings or less, these are really high-profile meetings, and they need to look significantly different than people sitting in a conference room or a collaboration space.
Yeah, so there's some overlap in some of these technologies. If you've gone through the vault, you saw the beyond the bar camera experience and what we're seeing in AI development kind of at the camera. Jason Roberts, some of the technologies that we're seeing in the broadcast side with tracking apply on the collaboration space. Maybe give us some insight there.
Yeah, AI is immersed in everything we're doing, right? It's all over the place. Craig talked about it a lot around camera technology and collaboration spaces. Jason talked about it, about how it's intuitive and how it's helping us track meetings, and it's understanding who's in those meetings and the conversations we're having, and how it can just help consolidate a lot of information. But one of the things that AI is really doing too is it's helping us from a day 2 standpoint, or what we consider support. So think about managed services. There are things around smart intelligence that are helping a lot of the technology systems today recognize what their faults are, recognize where the problems are, sometimes even self-heal a little bit. And self-heal is if they see things over and over and over again, there's opportunities for systems to be very smart with AI, capturing information, and then creating outcomes that are a little bit more predictable, something that we collate together and say, if this information is happening, do these things. So AI is really a driving force that's not only helping us, I think, on day 0, just understanding who we are and making our lives easier. It's helping us in collaboration spaces as we're groups of people, and it's helping us in support and managed services, helping our systems stay healthier, be more reliable, and continuing to help us get through the things that we want to do, which is spend time with people, solve problems, move our businesses forward, those kinds of things. So I love that it's helping us do the things that we as humans really specialize in and can get better at by doing some of those tasks for us and teaching us some of the information that sometimes isn't visible to us, but that detail over time is so important to be captured.
So Jason Molden, we got a pretty good exposure to Places today. Who here went through the Places demo?
Oh, good group, nice.
Still an opportunity.
It's still an opportunity. So with AI, so thank you for bringing up AI. AI as it relates to Places or Copilot, we looked at some space reservation technologies that were largely manual, find my space, reserve my space, that kind of thing. But I keep hearing AI starting to play a role with places and it helping you make more informed decisions based on what maybe else is happening in the office you don't have visibility into. Maybe touch on some of the advancements there.
So just a quick primer. Microsoft Places is a new offering that's going to go to general availability expected towards the end of the year. Magenium has been an active partner. Just a quick plug to Keith's point. We're providing demos here on the floor if you're interested. Places is intended or expected to solve real estate challenges, workplace, utilization. So I'll give you two examples on the AI front. For the user experience, when we think about what Copilot or what AI will do, we're talking about a wider scope. You mentioned filters. I'm looking for a room with a Kodak. I want to be able to make a call. What Places is doing is it's combining not only the room detail, room availability, room size, room features, location, proximity, knowing the distance away that you are and suggesting rooms that are closer, but it's also then helping the user standpoint because the AI component will also help you figure out that if you're meeting with 3 different people, what is the most central location? What is the room? And it may look at the analytics curve and see which rooms are best used in the afternoons because if you look outside, right, if I'm sitting over here for lunch, that's one experience. If I'm sitting on the front of the building for the other, we're thinking about that type of detail being added in so that I can look for both the human element of who might be nearby, not only who's in the office, but who's available to meet. And it's, again, we're working through so many different layers of data and then providing that suggestion. Well, based on all the factors you're looking for, your best spot for a meeting is going to be this room in this building, this day, and this time. And they can automatically bring everybody else into it. So again, taking some of these manual tasks and getting through the automation component, but then also providing better recommendations. The next wave of Places will be concierge services. So let's say that I do book that room, and the next question is, well, would you like to have lunch ordered for the room? And we see these, many of these have been promises over the years that we've all experienced. There's this opportunity. We're starting to now realize that, and we're seeing this short-term view of what other features might be added will improve that experience. And AI is the driver behind it. We would not be able to accelerate or move this quickly if it weren't for those technologies behind the scenes.
So becoming almost like a true digital assistant.
It really is.
So Craig, in the keynote this morning, I touched on how I'll lean on AI from time to time when I run short on talent. Okay. On the broadcast side, what are you seeing beyond what we kind of touched on? How AI is really accelerating some of the deliverables.
Yeah, we're right on the cutting edge of some significant changes around media production. AI is going to change how efficient our workers are as far as finding content. Let's use the CEO as an example. We can train our system on what the CEO looks like and tell the system, go find all of the video clips with the CEO or this particular person. I'm interested in this topic, gather them for me and show me where they are. So rather than having to catalog everything and find it manually like we're used to doing right now, we're going to be able to utilize AI technology it's going to be much more efficient to find that and give us suggested clips that we'll be able to use to repurpose content. And that's after it's shot. Going back to the beginning, the advancements in camera tracking technology that we're going to use in broadcast are changing what the footprint looks like inside of a corporate studio, how many people are required. Do I need somebody behind the camera, or is the camera tracking technology good enough to follow those speakers as they walk across the stage? It's changing on a lot of levels from a production perspective.
Yeah. So Rob, this has been a heavy talk around Microsoft. Microsoft has had a large presence here on the stage today. But we can't forget Zoom and Google and WebEx or Cisco.
Yeah.
What are you seeing from an AI perspective? What advancements are you seeing on those platforms?
Well, it's a big question, and I wish we had more time to actually talk about it. You know, Cisco, right now focuses a little bit more on people insights, right? Zoom, they have a great way of, from a multi-language perspective, of tracking multi-languages, which is really, really, really cool. And Google actually has a focus on their documents and being able to summarize large documents and large recordings. So that's some of the things that they're actually doing right now. Now, tomorrow it's going to change. Last week it was different as well, right? But from an overall perspective, talking about Microsoft, talking about Google, talking about Cisco, and talking about Zoom, if I did a matrix of all of those different UC platforms, there's a lot of things that are matched up there. So all the things that you are using today from an AI perspective, you can do across the platforms. There's a lot of things that are actually the same. So that's not much difference. So, Microsoft does something one day and the next day Zoom does the same thing.
Well, it's
right?
because of you and I, though.
Yeah.
Like I call you and say, hey, can you tell
That's
Zoom
exactly
we
right.
need this?
That's
Right?
exactly
Or
right.
vice versa.
Exactly right.
Take some credit.
And so that's kind of what's happening out there. So I don't think anyone's missing out. There's no one leapfrogging anyone else. But they are doing some of the same things because we need some of those same things. But they're also focused on different things as well.
Yeah, thank you. Well, that wraps up our talk here today. Thank you all. Thank you, Logitech, for sponsoring this discussion.